Hi, I'm Stephen Edholm from the soon-to-be popular YouTube channel Skill Cult. Perhaps you've heard of me. Well, perhaps not. People often ask me, Stephen, how do you process your deer legs? Well, today I'm going to show you how I process deer legs. Okay, here we go. I'm going to show you how I process deer legs. Now, I have done so many of these, just big piles of them. I used to skin for hunters at these check stations where the hunters had to bring their deer through a check station. I'd just skin the animals in exchange for the hide, but I'd end up with these piles of legs. No one wants the legs. So yeah, you come home and it's like summertime because our deer hunting season's in August, and it's hot and you got this pile of legs and no way to freeze them or refrigerate them, and you just got to process them. So I got pretty fast at just ripping these things apart and getting the parts that I wanted. First, I'm going to show you what to do if you don't want to keep this skin. Like if you want to keep the skin with the hooves on, that's a different story. If you just want to use it for glue stock, this is how I do it. Sharp knife is essential. Also, a thin knife is better, like a narrow knife rather, this way, because you can get it under the skin, and that's kind of true for making any skinning opening cuts where you're cutting from underneath. Okay, so just zip this open, cut the skin off. This makes very good glue. You can kind of stitch it onto handles and stuff and just let it dry with the fur on it. That's kind of cool. Just lay it out to dry. I don't flesh it at all. There's some tendons and stuff here, but I just dry that stuff on if I want to use it for something. Now, what most people will show you is to cut underneath here and cut this out and cut out all this stuff. That's how I was taught to do it, and what I do is I open this sheath right here and I slice the sheath open. So what we have is actually a tendon within a sheath. I also feel down here where there's like a knot where what this is a fork where the tendon splits, and it goes to this toe and this toe and this toe. And I've never been able to really shred the sinew effectively past that point, so it's just a waste of time to spend my time trying to skin this sinew out any deeper than just right before that knot, like right where it divides. Cut it out, done. Now there's more sinew on the back here. You could definitely use that as sinew. I typically will end up using this part as glue stock. Now all of this is the sheath. At least that's what I call it. This makes great glue. However, in my experience, it does not make great sinew. If you want the hooves, you can pull the hooves off with hot water, and we'll get to that in a minute. If you want to make more glue, you can actually cook this whole section for glue. When people say hoof glue, you can't make glue from hooves. Trust me, take a pile of these and boil them as long as you want. It will not turn into glue. There's no such thing as hoof glue. What they mean is the foot. It's all this stuff and these lower legs. Like if the sinew wasn't wanted and none of this was wanted, they would just smash this up, cook it, skim the oil off the top for neat's foot oil, and then all of this connective tissue down in here makes great glue. But since there's a lot of fat involved, I would really suggest that you just save this extra scraps, and if you don't need sinew, just cook all the sinew into glue. Just make sure you get rid of this like meat. You don't want meat on there. So I'm just going to process a couple more of these. Real quick knife work just to get this freed up. I'm just glad the yellow jackets haven't found me. They have my number over at the house. They're just swarming because once I got this deer the other day, there were blood and stuff laying around. And they're like, oh, this is a restaurant here. Sinew. All this stuff's good for glue stock. Okay, now I'm going to show you one more thing. So right here in the front leg only, there are two bones called needle bones. They're right here, and you cut those out, and there's a little joint right up here. You can feel it move. I'm dulling my knife. Okay, so that's the needle bone, and you really have to kind of just scrape it with a knife to get it clean. You can cut off what you can now and then dry it and scrape it clean later. Glue stock, get the tendons off the back. If you're not using these as sinew, just get under there and cut all this connective tissue, any sheaths or, you know, whatever. All of it's good for glue. Just, like I said, just scrape the meat off. That's the important thing. You're not making soup stock, making glue. Well, you get the idea. And next I'm gonna go get some hot water and we're gonna remove the hooves. Okay, now it's time to remove the hooves. I got leaves all over my legs here. This water is hot. It is not boiling anymore, but it was close to boiling a minute ago, and that's good enough. Now you can also do this in a campfire, so if you can, you know, dip the leg in water first, but you don't have to, and then just bury it under the hot ashes. Don't get it so close that it's going to like scorch your hooves. So this is going to cook and loosen all this connective tissue that's inside of the hoof and allow us to just yank the hoof off. Okay, so once they soften up good, now what you don't want to do is leave them soaking in like boiling hot water for a really long time. That's going to cook the connective tissue so much that the hooves will just, the whole foot will fall apart. You just want the hoof to be loosened up a little bit. Okay, so you can also do this by hand a lot of the time. So you really don't need anything, just fire. See, that one's coming off real easy. Like, they don't always come off that easy, it's just, this might be an easy deer. These little guys are kind of hard to grab. And these things are pretty cool. They make really neat little rattles. I'll show you a rattle I made with these. And they make cool decorations on bags and stuff like that, especially since they kind of rattle around. So usually, I mean, if I'm doing a lot of these, I just grab a pair of pliers because it's a lot easier. But there you go. Now, while these are nice and green, you can trim them up. We'll talk more about these some other time, I think. But just for now, if you do this, go ahead and trim them while they're green. You can also re-soak them after they're dried, but you can't really trim them when they're dry. I mean, they just get way too hard. And then you can either leave this bottom part in, it's called the frog, it's like a softer part, or you can slice it out. Like if you're making rattles, it changes the sound of the rattle. So you can either cut that out or leave it. And also if you're going to poke holes, like in a more primitive situation, if you didn't have a drill, say you're using like an awl, a bone awl or something, you could poke a hole in this and then put a stick in it, like a little tiny stick, and leave that stick in there to dry. So then you'll have a nice round hole. When it's dry, you pull the stick out. Okay, I just want to show you one more thing real quick while we're here. We'll do more stuff on, I mean, there's a lot of useful stuff in these legs, but you know, we'll do more on that stuff later. I'm not doing how to use all this stuff, just how to process the legs right now. So green bone, it's almost like hardwood. If you have a good hatchet, look at that, you can just carve it. I mean, I can literally carve this like wood. If you have an extremely sharp bevel on your hatchet, you're gonna have trouble. I mean, you're gonna get chips in your axe blade and stuff. But kind of a typically the way I keep my hatchets, they're not going to suffer any damage at all. I mean, sure, it's going to dull it fairly quickly, but kind of a typical way I keep my hatchets, they're not going to suffer any damage at all. I mean, sure, it's going to dull it fairly quickly, but kind of a typical the way I keep my hatchets, they're not going to suffer any damage at all. I mean, sure, it's going to dull it fairly quickly, But that's what sharpening stones are for. Yeah, see that? No problemo. Now this oil in here, besides being good to eat, is what neat's foot oil is made from. So that's for oiling leather. It's a very fine liquid oil, and you have to render it, and believe me, it takes a lot of these. You know, if you're using a neat means cattle, so it's like a cow. So neat's foot oil was from cows, which have a lot more of this, and it's, you know, in a deer there's really not very much. You can take this out and use it to oil things or whatever. But okay, so anyway, there's a whole bunch of little bones in here. The best way to get those, if you want to use them for jewelry or decorations or anything, is just to bury this and dig it up in a year. If you want these big bones uncracked and to be able to use like big pieces of them with no cracks, you're better off skinning these out and cleaning them now. Like I would cut, you know, this joint apart, scrape off all this tissue, oil the whole bone thoroughly with like a thick oil preferably, and then let it dry slowly, because it will crack just like wood will crack when it seasons, and for the same reasons, which I'll describe some other time. So if you want the big bones, cut them out now and save them if you want them totally without any cracks. Now the rest of these bones, bury them, dig them up in 1 year, and again, some other time I'll tell you about how to clean them from there. But that should get all the gross stuff off, and they'll just be, you know, clean bones. Now if you leave them for 2 years, all the joints, like the little fused parts of the bones, will start to fall apart, and that's maybe not so good. So about a year seems to be about the right amount of time. I'm actually going to go ahead and skin this out as if I was going to keep the dew claws on the skin and maybe make something with this skin. I hear a squirrel over my head. Squirrel season opens, I think, next month. I'm always excited about that. So now I'm going to go down between the toes, all the way to the hoof. Got to take it all the way, as far down as you can. It's just kind of a pain in the butt to do. I just stopped doing it a long time ago because I would accumulate piles of these things and then never use them. But, you know, I have made a couple of cool bags over the years. Okay, pull that down as far as I can. Might have to get in here and do a little knife work. Mostly because it's just really hard to get in here and pull, you know, there's not a lot to grab onto. But as always, when using a knife, use it carefully and use it as little as possible. It's kind of the rule for skinning, at least a deer and animals like that. So down here at the hoof, I'm just going to go right up to the hoof. Oops. And I could never be a taxidermist, I just don't have the patience for it. People when they're first starting out with this stuff always want to skin like everything, you know, the whole face and the ears, and it just takes forever. Oh my god. Not my idea of a good time. You got to get right down in here. You got to be careful. So eventually you're going to get to a joint. Like I said, there's a triangular shaped bone inside of the hoof, and you can leave that. So I'm just poking my knife in between that joint here. I got it. I found it. I can feel. It just takes a long time, but there it is. So you can see that it's neat. I mean, it's worth doing sometime. To get like a bag or something, you kind of need 4 of these. You know, the back legs are different than the front legs, so you kind of need 2 deer to get like 4 front legs or 4 back legs. Anyway, you can do this 2 ways. You can also split it this way and have the hooves out here, which I think is actually kind of cooler. Okay, so I got all my parts laid out here, the hooves, the skins. Here's the lower leg skin tacked to a board. It's all ready to go, just dry it like that. You know, I whittled off a few pieces of tissue, but other than that, I just leave it the way it is. and dry all that stuff on there. Now this stuff and the sinew are vulnerable to attacks by insects like the same moths that eat wool and beetles, these beetles that eat skin. So that can be a problem in storage, but you know, that's just how it goes. Everything's temporary. This bracelet is made from the bone inside the little dew claws here. And this is a hoof rattle. These hoof rattles are just really common all over the world, using different types of hooves. It might be deer, goat, pig, sheep, I don't know, whatever, you know. And here's a guitar strap, spiky guitar strap made with the bone from inside the hoof. Like that. Cool stuff. And yeah, once the legs are buried and dug up in the ear, you can get all these little different bones. There's a bunch of cool little bones in there you can use for clasps and buttons and beads and stuff like that. That's it for today.